Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. For those who did not hear, in an attempt to answer everyone's questions appropriately and as quickly as possible, please only use the Q&A function if you have a specific question, program-related question, or question for me. We are going to use the chat feature to participate and to communicate responses. So please reserve the Q&A for specific program-related questions. Welcome back to folks who have joined me for the previous two sessions. A welcome to people who are just now joining for the bystander intervention conversation. Again, I'm super happy to be here with you guys. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share this space with you. And I appreciate you coming back for session 3 of 4. We're almost there. So today we are going to be talking about bystander intervention. This is the third of 4 sessions in the series. So thank you all for participating. Just as a reminder, all of this is in the series of creating a culture of care. We've been talking about why that's important. We talked about effective peer communication, healthy relationships, and healthy boundaries. And today we're going to be talking about how we can show that we care for people by intervening in potentially harmful situations. Just as a reminder, creating a culture of care sort of aims to help students develop the mentality that true leaders listen, they recognize, and they empower others. I know that we all naturally want to help those in need, and very often we can help people in need. But CCC is sort of this initiative seeking to encourage all of our natural kindness and helpfulness by providing you all with the tools to be leaders and to assist those in distress. And with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit more about bystander intervention. I see that several more people have joined. If you did not hear, please reserve the Q&A function for specific program-related questions, and then I'll have you all respond in the chat function, similar to what we did yesterday when I have an open-ended question or want some responses. Awesome. So some questions to keep in mind for today. What is bystander intervention and why is it important? I'm very sure that many of you have heard of bystander intervention before. Today we'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll talk about the importance of it. And then what steps can I take to ensure the safety of a potential victim? What does that look like? What do those steps look like? Today we'll process that together as a group. Like I said, you may use a paper and pencil if you want to jot down some notes or jot down some of your thoughts, but it is not mandatory, it's not required. If you have access to that, awesome. If not, that's totally fine. And as you all are familiar with me now, trigger warning, we will be talking about some things that may be sensitive to some people or may be triggering to some folks. Like I always say, your mental health and your mental well-being is more important than anything. So please take care of yourself. If you feel triggered at any moment, if you feel like something is very difficult to talk about at any moment, please feel free to step away from your computer or use some self-care to take care of yourselves. So what is bystander intervention? At its core, it's very simple. An individual or group of individuals witness a situation between other people developing that could turn into something harmful or dangerous. And the bystanders choose to act to stop it from escalating any further. Sounds very simple at its core, right? Like folks see something happening and they step in, they act, they do something about it. So if we have bystander intervention, I'm sure many of you may have heard of the bystander effect. The bystander effect is a social theory in which individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim when other people are present. So they're less likely to intervene when other people are around or other people are present. And this stems from a very famous case that became very famous. It's called the Kitty Genovese case. In the 1920s in New York, a woman was brutally attacked on her front porch. She was unfortunately stabbed several times. And the people who saw this happen, sort of just watched, they observed, they didn't do anything. They just stood there and watched this woman attack on her porch. And people were fascinated by this. What would cause people to just stand there and watch when something like this is happening, something so heinous? So these two psychologists, Bibb Latagne and John Darley, were so fascinated, they decided to do a case study on it. They were like, you know what, let's look into people, why people did this, let's interview them, let's talk to them, what causes people to react in that way. And the bystander effect has a couple of core principles. One of them is the diffusion of responsibility, which is folks thinking that someone else is going to step up and take responsibility. So for example, if we were all in a room together and something happened, like the ceiling fell in, or a fire started, or some disaster was about to happen, and none of us did anything, that's likely because of a diffusion of responsibility. All of us are thinking that someone else is going to do it. And that happens quite a bit in stressful and high stress situations, that we often think, you know what, someone else will take care of that. Someone else is going to handle that situation. And the other piece of it was social influence. And this was probably the most interesting piece to these two psychologists. Individuals in a group monitor the behavior of those around them to determine how to act. Now, I'm sure many of us can look to situations that have happened in our lives where we have looked to other people to decide how we're going to react to a certain situation. Let's take it back to us being in a room together and a fire is starting. Some people are uncomfortable being the first to act, being the first to do something until someone else does it. They see someone else do it, and then they get the courage to do it. They feel empowered to do it because now they've seen someone else do it. But oftentimes it's sort of that groupthink mentality where we're waiting for someone else to do something first before we feel comfortable enough to do it ourselves. And this is often what it looks like. People saying or thinking to themselves, I thought you'd do it. I thought you were going to do it. I thought this person was going to do it. For the folks in the Kitty Genovese case that happened in the 1920s, that's what the majority of her neighbors and bystanders said. You know what? I thought someone else was going to call the police. I thought someone already had called the police. Everyone assumed that someone else was taking responsibility. So with all of that in mind, talking about bystander effect, the history of bystander intervention, we created a program called Step In. And Step In is a bystander intervention program that is aimed towards ending sexual assault, because that is the focus of my job. But it's important for me to tell you all that it's not just for sexual assault. These principles in bystander intervention can be applied to any harmful situation or potentially harmful situation. There are many different circumstances where bystander intervention is the appropriate method to take. Okay, so now we are going to talk about what Step In means, what it stands for. So the S is stop, as you can see underneath. The T is think, the E is engage, and the P is prevent. And we're going to talk about each one of those and why those 4 steps are very, very important. The S in step stands for stop. So we live in a really fast-paced society. Unfortunately, it's usually an egocentric society. We've all been socialized to sort of, quote unquote, stay out of other people's business. It's not our business. We don't need to worry about it. Sometimes it's difficult for us to identify behaviors like bullying, sexism, racism, homophobia, among many other things, because of how we have been socialized. Because we've been socialized not to view things that are out of our specific purview. Yet in a culture where people experience harms on a daily basis, it's a responsibility of all of us to recognize problematic situations and help care for other people. A situation doesn't have to look stereotypically dangerous for us to step in and do something. If we see someone who looks uncomfortable or maybe unhappy, stop and just assess the situation. It's a very simple step. It doesn't take much effort. It's very minimal. Just stop and assess the situation. Be observant of your surroundings. That's the very first step that we can take. The next step The T in STEP stands for think. Once we have stopped and observed behavior that might be inappropriate, demeaning, coercive, or potentially violent, it's time to think about the most appropriate and safest way to intervene. We have to make sure that we think about how to keep ourselves safe and keep the potential victim or victims safe. Sometimes direct confrontation or direct intervention might not be the safest option. We'll talk more about that direct intervention piece too. So now we've stopped, we've observed, we're thinking about the next step that we're going to take, the most important step. The E in STEP represents engage. And that's the 3Ds that you'll hear oftentimes in any bystander intervention curriculum. There are 3 Ds of engagement, and we'll talk about what those 3Ds are. They are the most common ways that you can intervene, and they can be the most successful as well. So now that we've stopped, we've thought about it, we're thinking about this engagement. The first D is distract. Now you can diffuse a situation just by starting up a casual conversation, doing something like asking to borrow a phone or pretending that someone looks familiar. The goal is to prevent a situation from getting worse, or to buy enough time to check in with the potential victim to see if the person needs help. So distract can be a really useful tool in certain situations. It's important to know that these 3 Ds that we're going to talk about, they vary in different situations. You can't use all of them in a situation. It's going to be different from time to time. It depends. But distract can be a very useful tool when thinking about how to intervene in a situation. The second D is direct. Ask directly if the potential victim is okay, needs help, or needs someone to stay with them. You can directly ask if the victim wants to leave or wants to grab a bite to eat with you to help create an excuse to leave. Or you can directly tell the perpetrator that their actions are not acceptable. And sometimes, like I said, direct intervention can be great if we feel comfortable doing so. If the situation calls for that, we are not going to be harmed. Direct intervention can be very helpful. The last one is delegate. There's comfort in numbers. Enlisting an ally like a peer that you have developed a healthy relationship with through effective communication and setting boundaries, see what I did there, can diffuse a situation much more smoothly than trying to do it alone. You can also look for someone else who might be in a better position to get involved. Example would be to tell a teacher, staff, contact your direct advisor, or call the authorities if the situation calls for that. So we have distract, direct, and delegate. We're going to talk a little bit more about these 3 Ds too. And the last step is prevent. When you make the choice to stop, think, and engage to help protect or care for someone, you might not only prevent violence or harm for that one potential victim, but you will also work towards building a culture of care by modeling a caring behavior. Showing other people that you will not tolerate violence in any form will help others feel empowered to step in and make your entire community a safer place. So by modeling these behaviors, you're showing that you're a leader not only to your club, but to your school and to the community as well. And like I talked about previously, sometimes when someone sees a person step in and do that caring, thoughtful act, that can help empower them, and that can change their line of thinking as well. They can become empowered. And we know that leadership is all about empowering others around us. This is a great tool to use in those moments. I'd like to share a video with you all here. And this video uses a lot of the steps that I just talked about, a little bit different language, so try not to get confused. I'll try and clear up some of that after. But like I said, if you have a pen and paper, go ahead and write down anything that resonates with you or anything that stands out, and then we'll have a discussion following the video.
We never think that terrible things will happen to us.
Transporting one to Sibley Hospital for alcohol poisoning.
Or to the people we know. The truth is, many students face issues, including alcohol abuse, dating violence, hazing, sexual assault, and mental health emergencies. Many times we have the opportunity to prevent it, we just don't notice until it's too late. But what if you could step up to make a difference?
Will you step up? First, notice that something is happening. Know what's going on around you.
Second, recognize that something is wrong. If something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't.
Third, take personal responsibility. If not you, then who?
Fourth, know how you can help. There are lots of ways that you can intervene.
Finally, step up to help using one of the 3 Ds. Direct, delegate, or distract. You could be the difference.
All night, baby. Who's next? Who's next? Come on. Come on.
You can be direct if something doesn't seem right. Hey, I think you've had enough. Let's take a break and get you some water.
Let me see it right there. You acting like I didn't do this. You're making me freaking respect. Hey, man, I don't think you should be yelling at her like that. Maybe you should take a walk. You all right?
Hey, Jonathan, are you coming out tonight?
No, I don't feel like doing anything. Saying anymore.
Oh, okay. I hope you feel better. I'll see you later.
If you don't feel comfortable or you don't know what to do, you can delegate. Ask someone else to get involved. Hey, can I talk to you? I'm really worried about Jonathan.
You wanna get out of here? My doorway's nearby.
It's as easy as causing a distraction. My roommate's really drunk. Could you distract me while I get her out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, buddy, aren't you in my econ class? Econ class? Yeah.
Hey, you look tired. You want to go back to the room? You can be the difference. Be more than just a bystander. It's what we do here at American University.
Keep in mind your safety and the well-being of others when assessing the situation and deciding what actions to take. You have options. If you don't feel safe directly intervening, you can cause a distraction, or you can delegate and get someone else involved.
I'm really sorry for those of you all who had a rough experience with the video. I know that we were working to get you a better version, a better quality than we had yesterday. So thank you all for bearing with us as we sort of figure out that technology. Again, sorry about that. So if we think about that video, I want you to sort of digest that mentally a little bit, what took place in the video. For those who it was hard to hear, we'll talk a little bit about that. If your name starts with the letter B, no, I'm sorry, we used B yesterday, I apologize. If your name starts with the letter T, the letter T is in toy, what were some of your thoughts about the video? What resonated with you? What stood out in that? Were there any situations you would have handled differently? Were there any that you were like, that was super appropriate? I love the way that that was handled. I will say one of my biggest takeaways, not biggest takeaways, but one of my thoughts, please answer in the chat, sorry. Please answer in the chat and not in the Q&A section. I think talking to the RA was very appropriate. I do too. I think another reason why people are afraid to stand up is because, for example, in harassment scenario, they could potentially get harmed. Thank you for that response. That's actually what I always think about when there's the potential intimate partner violence taking place in the dorm room. The guy sort of interjects himself into the scenario and physically puts himself in between the perpetrator and the victim. That can be a very harmful situation. I would not advise to handle it that way because it already seemed very escalated. So in that situation, I likely would delegate. I would go find an RA or a trusted adult or the authorities if that's the route I want to go. But I would not interject in that situation in the way that he did. There may be a threat preventing someone to stand up, absolutely. Awesome, awesome, very good answers. So that was just a few scenarios where you can think about those 3Ds and what situations you would use those in. I liked when the roommate pulled out the drunk roommate from the situation. That was a really good situation too. The very first scenario, when that person was caring for the other person and they just sort of say, hey, I think you may have had enough, or let's go over here, let's stop drinking. And then the very last scenario where there's a distraction, the guy just goes up to him and says, hey, aren't you in my econ class? And then the roommate takes the other roommate away. I think both scenarios are pretty relevant and things that we can do ourselves too, really. Okay. I want to do an activity with you all. I will ask again for y'all to share in the chat after we read these scenarios. There's going to be various scenarios, and I'll ask you all which of the 3Ds you would use and why you would use it in that scenario. Okay, so first, scenario 1. You're riding on the train, it's crowded, and you notice a man muttering slurs and threats under his breath towards a younger person of color near him. You are nearby and notice there is more room on the other end of the train car. What do you do? What 3D strategy would you use and why? So if you have that piece of paper, go ahead and jot down what would you do in this situation? Which strategy would you use? Direct, distract, or delegate? Go ahead and write those down. and then I will ask for responses in the chat, and I'll read as many as I can. Write your answers down on a piece of paper, and then I will ask for responses. Give you all a few more seconds. I'll repeat the scenario one more time. You are riding on the train, it's crowded, and you notice a man muttering slurs and threats under his breath towards a younger person of color near him. You are nearby and notice there is more room on the other end of the train car. What do you do? What 3D strategy would you use and why? Oops. Okay, if you are wearing the color blue today, please type your response in. You are wearing the color blue. Go ahead and type your response in. Okay. Quite a few people saying distract. Distract to move them to the other side of the train. Distract because I would want to get the girl away from the man and to safety at the other end of the train. Distract, I pretend to know the victim and take them with me to the other side of the car. If the person followed, I would ask another person on the car to come with us so we can stay safe. Delegate, awesome. Direct, because one person is doing it without others noticing, I can get the person of color to go to the other side. I would distract. I would start a conversation with the victim, then bring them elsewhere on the train. If the perpetrator gets more vocal, I'll speak directly to him to get him to stop and respect others. Awesome answers, you all. Direct, because saying things like that isn't nice and it shouldn't be left alone. He needs to know that what he's doing is wrong, so confrontation is what I do. If after that he still doesn't listen, I would take the younger person to the other side of the car and leave the situation. Awesome answer. So we have quite a few direct and quite a few distract. Awesome answers. Thank you all so much for participating and sharing your answers with us. In a scenario like this, sometimes it may be best to be direct. But again, direct happens in situations where we feel safe and we feel comfortable. If it feels like a threat or feels like a harm, like you might harm yourself, distract. In this kind of a scenario, it's important to de-escalate the situation before it advances any further. It can be highly effective to act as though you know the person, like a few people said, saying something like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. You want to go catch up over there on the other end of the train? Whatever it may be, that can open up opportunities for the person experiencing harassment to accept your support and leave the situation. Or if they don't want to, they can reject your support by saying they don't know you or they don't want your help in that situation. And though sometimes that could seem either silly or vulnerable, the worst that happens that you apologize for making a mistake and thinking that they were someone you knew. In situations like that, we sort of want to put our pride to the side and think about the other person that we potentially could be helping, because oftentimes we know that pride can get in the way of helping people. So we want to be as cognizant as possible that in this moment, I can truly help this person. Awesome responses, y'all. All right, scenario number 2. You're finishing up your homework for the night and headed home from the library when you get a phone call. One of your friends and key club members just told you that they are very depressed and don't want to live anymore. You're finishing up your homework for the night and headed home from the library when you get a phone call. One of your friends and Key Club members just told you that they are very depressed and that don't want to live anymore. What do you do in that situation? What do you do in that situation? Go ahead and write that down on a piece of paper, like previously, and then we'll talk about that. Let me give you all a few seconds to write your thoughts down on a piece of paper. Sorry, y'all. Got some weird stuff going on with my screen right now. That was weird. Sorry.
Everything okay in here, Burton?
Yeah, I just had some weird stuff going on with my screen. I think it's fixed now, I hope.
Are you still able to share your slides?
Let me make sure. Can you see those?
No, 1 second. I think I need to cancel your spotlight video. Can you try to share screen again?
What about now?
Okay. My apologies. I'm just trying to get you back.
Thank you. Thank you all for your patience. I appreciate it.
Can you try to enable your video again for me, Burton?
Yes.
Okay. Can share. Okay. How about now? Are you able to share your screen? There we go.
Are we back?
Sorry about that.
My apologies. Thank you all.
I see your slides now.
Okay. Let me get back to presenter view. Thank you all for your patience. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Okay, so we are on scenario 2. Okay, so for scenario 2, if you are currently in a place that it is hotter than 90 degrees, if it's hotter than 90 degrees where you currently are, please jot down your answers in the chat. What would you do in that situation if you got that distressing phone call? I help them out as much as possible by directly talking to them. And after we finish talking, call the suicide hotline. Could answer, delegate, or distract. I would probably call 911 or a trusted adult. I would also go as well because I don't know what that person is doing. Sometimes ignorance can cause catastrophic things. If I reach them in time, I would try to distract them and get them to stop whatever they were trying to do. Very good answer. Distract them by continuing to talk on the phone. I don't necessarily know if I should go to them directly. So depending on the severity of the case, I would try to ease them out of it calmly. I would delegate. I would want to let someone know, because going directly to the friend could jeopardize them and cause them to act on their thoughts. Having someone else know. I would delegate, because a counselor suicide hotline would be better at de-escalating the situation quicker than I can. Very good answer. I'd stay on the call talking to them and make my way to them. When I feel the immediate danger has passed, I would delegate. I would delegate. Quite a few delegates. Awesome. Very good answers, you all. As always, just incredible answers, very insightful. Quite a few people would use distract and delegate. Distract them by continuing to talk. And I incorporated this scenario specifically because this can be a situation that many of us encounter throughout our lives. It can be a very distressful situation, and it can be very, very scary, especially if we're not equipped with the tools to handle that situation. So in a situation involving self-harm or even potential self-harm, we need to always take those very, very seriously. Even if we think a friend or member may be joking or kidding, or they say it sort of as a passing comment, which also is problematic because we shouldn't be joking about self-harm or suicide. It's something that they say all the time. Maybe we address that with them and say, you know, when you joke like that, I have to take you seriously. I'm going to take you seriously. Because there's a greater risk of a person with sort of those suicidal ideations to harm themselves if they have the means to do so. And we don't always know if they have the means to do so, so we have to take them seriously. We have to take them for their word. This is a situation where contacting the appropriate people will always be the best response. I love that some people were saying I would keep them on the phone as long as possible until I could delegate. That can be a great way to do it. But always seeking those professionals who are equipped with the tools to handle those situations will always be the best response in a situation like that. Someone typed in the question answer function earlier, they specifically asked, what do we do if they say, don't tell anyone, if they don't want us to say anything? In a situation like that, I can't be any more clear. If someone is a threat to harm themselves or harm other people, we have to be very honest with them and say, you just told me something very serious. Even though I am your friend, even though I know you trust me, I have to tell someone this. I have to, because it's potentially saving your life or potentially saving someone else's life. And that's bigger than all of us, right? Like that's a situation that none of us should be keeping to ourselves. We want to make sure that the professionals know, because they are trained and equipped to handle those situations. So again, in a situation like that, I know that it can be scary. I know that it can be a potentially high stress situation. We have to think about that other person and think about potentially saving their life, even if they want to confide in us. So trying to reframe it through that lens, that you are saving their life and you are doing something that is the ultimate good thing, good deed. Hopefully that's helpful with folks who are facing someone who says, I don't want you to tell, or I don't want you to say anything. And again, like I said previously, if that's triggering for folks, if it's a difficult conversation to have, I completely understand that. Please take care of yourselves. Please instill some self-care and do what's necessary to make sure that your mental health and mental well-being is safe at this time. Awesome answers, you all. All right, the third scenario, the final scenario. You're leaving a party and you notice that several people who appear drunk are shoving another person who seems non-confrontational, but also unable to get away. You're leaving a party and you notice that several people who appear drunk are shoving another person who seems non-confrontational, but also unable to get away. What do you do? Go ahead and write it down on a piece of paper. What would you do in that situation? If where you are is currently below 70 degrees, if it is below 70 degrees where you currently are, please type your answer in the chat function. What would you do in that situation? We are running close to time, so please go ahead and feel free to write yours down. Awesome, I'm seeing some delegate, awesome. In this situation, we would absolutely want to delegate. Situations involving physical violence mean there is a greater risk of a bystander also experiencing that violence by becoming involved. But it also raises the stakes and urgency of our intervention. While there is no single answer for how to intervene, we always suggest finding another person to support you, or notifying a friend or a loved one. And this may be a time for you to call the authorities and say, you know what, there's this really potential harmful situation about to happen. You can also sort of pretend that you're on the phone calling the police. That can diffuse the situation for some if it's about to become harmful. But always delegate in that situation, because we want to make sure that we stay safe while helping other people. And a few people mentioned the suicide hotline. I want to show this to you all before we leave today. It's really important that you all familiarize yourself with your resources, your local resources, your school resources, your community resources. And I work for Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault and Human Trafficking, but we also partner with coalitions all around the country and all around the world too. So I suggest that if you're looking for community resources, type in the name of your state or your territory or your country, and then after that put the keywords coalition sexual assault, coalition domestic violence, and folks at the coalition will be able to link you to resources that are helpful to you. I also wanted to point out that Kiwanis International just launched a new dedicated youth protection helpline. It's staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by trained professionals. Members can report inappropriate behavior, abuse, or policy violations, and then those calls are rerouted to your youth protection team. So go ahead, take a screenshot, take a picture, write down those resources, because the suicide prevention lifeline, the sexual assault hotline, those are things that we can give to people. If we know that they're in a situation where they need some resource and they need some help, we can refer them to these resources. That's the first step when being a leader, and this is a huge step in bystander intervention. It's not always physically doing something, but providing those resources, that's being an active bystander as well, and that's really important. We're at the end of our time today. I just want to share this with you all before you leave, why we should all care. I really love this quote. I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about that. Then I realized I am somebody. Y'all are all capable. We're all capable of making a positive change. The second that we realize that we can help someone in a situation, that's when we need to act on it. That's when we need to do something. We are all that somebody. We are all that person that can make a change. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time. I appreciate sharing the space with you again. Hopefully you were able to come back in the next session and train the trainer, so we can sort of talk about how you all can facilitate these things in your clubs and in your communities. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for today. I appreciate it.